And we are back for the Thousand Worlds Book Club, and we're talking about Meathouse Man. We are joined by Sansa. Oh, hello everyone. I'm very honored to be here. I really love stories, and so I'm very much looking forward to the tale of, Meathouse Man? That doesn't sound like a typical story. Oh, it's not. Meathouse Man is the third and final story in the Corpse Handler trilogy. It was originally published in 1976, though written in 1973 and 1974. And it is truly something else. It is perhaps the most brutal, honest, depraved, and in many ways courageous piece of work our author has written. If you haven't read it or listened to it yet, I cannot really recommend it enough. When I first finished it, I remember just saying, wow. So stop the video, go read it, and come back. And so as it turns out, Meathouse Man is not well liked by our author, and at the same time, I've met many people who hold Meathouse Man as our author's greatest work. Now yes, that does sound weird considering the subject matter, but I would say that it is a great story and definitely is up there with his best. It's certainly the most striking and powerful piece that our author has ever written. I actually met a fan who told our author that it was her favorite story, and he jokingly told her, "Wow, you're pretty fucked up." In truth, though, I think the reason our author doesn't like the story is that it's far too personal for him. It's an honest recording of some real painful and embarrassing memories. In fact, he said in Dream Songs, written 30 years after Meathouse Man, that it was still a painful read for him. The story was also sent back to him not just for revision, but for complete rewrite, and then was rejected after that, which vexed him a great deal. In fact, he said the only reason he later included it in his Dream Songs collection was because of the massive work that he put into it, not because he liked the story or thought it was any good. And so here we have a story that our author labored over greatly, that's filled with emotions so true that he himself dislikes the story. I think that's actually a recipe for greatness. So Meathouse Man's protagonist is Traeger, a corpse handler on Scracky. Although this initial environment is rather depressing, like Nobody Leaves New Pittsburg, the story does not use it to push a political message. The worker versus master dynamic of Pittsburg and Override is gone, and instead the bleak planet is used to create an environment of loneliness and hopelessness for Traeger. And the corpse metaphor has now more to do with personal romantic relationships. The story is that of Traeger and his journey into manhood as he discovers women, sex, and relationships. He begins as a lonely boy not really knowing anything, and he's brought to a whorehouse that features corpses as prostitutes. And yes, one of George R.R. Martin's greatest stories opens with necrophilia. Anyway, the prostitutes' brains are gone, but the bodies are still alive, and Traeger begins to have sex with one of the corpses, and surprisingly, it responds. The corpse whore then rocks his world with some great sex, and he assumes that it was given to him by some talented puppet master handler. Later we find out that Traeger himself is actually one of the best corpse handlers out there, able to control many corpses at once with fantastic precision. But despite being talented professionally, he's a lonely soul searching for love. He tries to follow and imitate his coworker friends in their search for women, but he doesn't really fit in with them and is super nervous. His evenings are spent mostly alone, simply dreaming of love and masturbating. He eventually goes back to the whorehouse and has some more rockin' sex and begins to wonder who these fantastic sex handlers are and would even like to meet one. His friends laugh at him and tell him there are no handlers except for him. The corpse taps into Traeger's subconscious and he's the one controlling the corpse. That's why the corpse was so perfect and knew exactly what he liked. He was deluding himself and was essentially masturbating the whole time. Disgusted, ashamed, and embarrassed, Traeger swears off corpse whores. So, Sansa, how are you doing? I need to go find some lemon cakes or something. And so we continue. Traeger eventually meets a real girl, a mechanic or a tech expert or something, who knows the machines that Traeger's corpses use. Her name is Josie, and she's a typical George R.R. Martin strong female. An Asha Ygritte Arya type with intelligence, fierceness, quirky beauty, and joie de vivre. In their first meeting, she brings up an important metaphor about machinery that keeps failing and how people delusionally think that somehow the machine will work later. Traeger asks her to hang out with him and she agrees, and they do spend time together, though it's painfully obvious from the get-go that Traeger has been friend-zoned. She really only hangs out with him with other people around, and he knows he's been friend-zoned, but at the same time he starts building a delusion in his head that they have a special bond. The pain and despair of unrequited love builds and builds for a year, and finally, even though Traeger is pretty sure he's going to be shot down, he professes his love to Josie. Of course, she denies him and reveals that she knew Traeger's feelings but didn't want to hurt his and didn't want him to fall back into his lonely despair. She assures him that true love is out there for him and that he needs to keep searching. "So Sansa, you still around?" "Oh yes, I'm still here. Wait, they don't fall in love?" "No, he was friend-zoned. He lived in delusion for a year and then had his heart broken." "Oh, well, at least he's no longer a necrophile, so things are looking up for the story." So crushed and motivated to put some distance between him and Josie, Traeger moves from the industrial Scracky to the wooded Vandalia to become a forester. There he makes a friend, Donnelly, who is just as lonely and in search of love as he is. The two commiserate and Traeger assures Donnelly that real love is out there, though later in a moment of weakness, Traeger does hit the corpse whorehouse. Crap, the necrophilia is back? Damn it! Of course, a delusionally friend-zoned person later hitting a whorehouse reminds us a lot of Jorah Mormont. So eventually Traeger does meet a new girl, Laurel. She's a bit timid and submissive and not really great looking, but over time she becomes beautiful to Traeger. It should be noted that the exact same thing happens to Jon. Ygritte starts out looking not that great and becomes beautiful. Val starts out good looking, but she becomes the most stunning woman on the planet for Jon later. Shifting beauty seems to show that a character is falling in love. Traeger falls for Laurel, and this time the love is reciprocated, and for a time Traeger is happy. He quits his job as a forester and starts working a corpse theater troupe to be close to Laurel. His best friend Donnelly follows, and is also smitten by Laurel. And once again we see a car crash coming from miles away. Laurel starts pulling away from Traeger and mentions that Donnelly is pursuing her. Traeger doesn't want to hurt his best friend's feelings, so he tells Laurel to let him down easy. Then she claims that she loves both of them, and Traeger tries to accept that, and then she only loves Donnelly and says that she questions whether she really loved Traeger in the first place. The breakup crushes Traeger much worse than the rejection of Josie. He quits his job and tries to call Josie. She tries to be nice, but is clearly uncomfortable talking to him, and she has clearly found someone. "Well, this is all sad, but at least our character isn't having sex with corpses." He then goes and has sex with a bunch of corpses. He then dreams of love and delusion and asks if anyone ever finds love or if they just settle and delude themselves. He recalls the pain of his life and his failures with the metaphor about the machinery that keeps failing and how people delusionally think it's going to somehow work later. At the end of it all, we find Traeger as a master handler of corpse gladiators in an arena. And he is the greatest handler of them all, beating all of the other foes while remembering the pain of his past. He then goes home to find his beautiful new girlfriend. She greets him affectionately and is hopelessly in love with him. They have incredible sex. But alas, she is completely controlled by Traeger because she's a corpse. I think I'm going to be sick. So obviously the story is brutal in so many ways. First off, we know that many of these events were part of our author's life. We know that one of his girlfriends did leave him for his best friend, so that part is autobiographical. As for being friend-zoned once, yeah, his description of things is pretty true to life, so I imagine that happened to him too. And it's not a large leap to see that our author, as a writer, sees himself as a master puppet master. He's not working with physical corpses, but he has a talent for creating stories that the crowds come to see. You have to keep in mind his writing career did begin to take off in 1974. And yes, all those events must have hurt, and corpse fucking is pretty dark. But that said, the most brutal aspect of this story is its cynical assault on relationships and love. Traeger begins as a masturbator, alone, fucking himself. He adds corpses, but he's controlling them too, making him still a masturbator. He wants there to be someone else in the picture. He wants a strong, independent partner like Josie to love him, but he fails. So he settles for meek Laurel, who is inexperienced and not very good looking. But that's the thing. He can still control her, and he makes her good-looking in his mind. It's still a delusion, and it's still masturbation. Eventually, Laurel grows independent and leaves him, so he just settles on a corpse again, remaining alone as a masturbator. And so our story is putting forward a lot of dark questions. Is our author claiming that unless we pursue a strong, independent partner like Josie, that we're essentially fucking a corpse? Are bimbos, pushovers, and trophy spouses just an exercise in corpse-fucking masturbation? A puppet master fucking a puppet? It's quite an accusation, as much of the relationships on this planet involve one partner who has power over the other. Or does the story go even further into darkness? The story claims that love is a lie. Is it that we all settle and delusionally convince ourselves that our partner is something they're not? That the machine is fundamentally broken and we're delusional in thinking that it can work? That we're as bad as Tyrion delusionally thinking that Shae is in love with him? We're all just corpse-fucking masturbators living a lie in our own self-created matrix? Or is the story about expectations? Did Traeger create in his head a notion of perfect love and sex that no real woman could ever live up to? And therefore it was his own damn fault that no one except his own puppet corpse could fill that hole. What is way darker than the pain of rejection or the grossness of necrophilia in this story is the idea that no matter what we do, we are alone, creating fantasies. Please kill me. Now there may be one aspect of the story that could have huge implications on the world of Ice and Fire, and that is the subconscious animation of the dead. For example, in A Storm of Swords, Lady Stoneheart actually rises from the dead after Arya wills her to live through Nymeria. Yes, right after Beric Dondarrion does go and kiss her, but there is some debate on which action is responsible for raising her. Lady Stoneheart could perhaps be seeking revenge based on the will of Arya. Or perhaps all the White Walkers are really animated through the subconscious mind of a time-traveling Bran. Yes, this sounds all pretty out there, but let's also keep in mind that subconscious, unintentional monsters is also the plot of George R.R. Martin's favorite movie, Forbidden Planet. And that's all for Meathouse Man. Thank you, Sansa, for joining us. And next time we'll cover one of George R.R. Martin's most critically acclaimed stories, Sandkings. We will see you then.